you. May we have a moment of silence, please?
What?
Moment of silence.
Amen. It's so special to be able to preach at this church. Julie and I had this is Julie. We had the opportunity to go to Australia.
Who needs a haircut?
Have a cruise that was going to take us from Melbourne all the way down to Perth and then to Bali and then to Singapore. So we started out for a couple of days at first in Melbourne. And we were with friends, and we decided to walk around, see museums, look at the architecture, which was stunning. And then we went to St. Paul's Anglican Cathedral. And at the cathedral, we went into this beautiful, beautiful church. And Julie and her friends went off to look in one side, and I always like to begin in the cathedral by sitting in the pews for a while and just contemplating. And so while I was sitting there, I looked up, and there were two priests and this other man that was there, and I said, they must be the priests.
Like he's got jeans on.
So I went over,
He was dressed as up.
I was
Maybe
going
they're
to
not
introduce myself.
jeans.
And I was sort of waiting on the outside, and all of a sudden, one of the priests said, we're kind of working with a colleague right now, so I can't really talk. So I went, inside with my ego, I'm going, well, I'm a colleague, So anyway, I went around the corner, and I saw this poster sitting there, which has always been in every church that I've served for many years. And I was looking at it, but there was a whole group of young people that were looking at it and studying it and trying to, you can't see, but this is only one part of the Rembrandt painting. There's another part that shows what looks like a woman in the background, a man in robes over here. You can even look it up on your phone or on your, would it be easier for you folks to come over here?
Yes. I know I can't see it.
So anyway, I go around the corner, here's the poster, and then the priest came by. And the two of them were with the other man, and he said, you guys go ahead, I'm gonna talk to him for a minute. So he came over and introduced himself. He turns out to be the dean of the cathedral. And the man that they were talking to, they were trying to orient him because the next day he was going to be installed as the Bishop of Melbourne and all the surrounding areas. So it did seem somewhat important. So he came over and introduced himself, and I introduced myself, and I just had to ask him about why they were displaying the poster, because I told him how Henry Nouwen had been my mentor at Yale Divinity School, really kept me in school. And so he had read Henry Nouwen, he had read his book on the Return of the Prodigal Son, which is all about this painting. And so I said, I know you probably need to get with this other colleague, so I just want to encourage you to head on. But the group of young people that were still looking at the painting were just studying it. I thought maybe they were a guided group. So I went over and I said, so are you a group that's guided? What's making you study this particular poster? And they said, well, one woman could speak English. They were from Sri Lanka. And they had just this sort of Christian experience, and they understood that the value of the Rembrandt painting. And so I said that I had sort of a background in theology, and so they said, oh, can you tell us, you can see an image usually of a woman in the background over there. Why is she on the outside? And I said, well, maybe in that time she wasn't allowed to be in with the men, and So I gave some opinions on things, and then she gave an opinion that was profound. And I said to her, you're a theologian. And she just smiled, so anyway, they ended up going along, and I studied it for a while, but now let me tell you about this and why it's important to me. Henry Nouwen, again, meant so much in my life. And many know that he's written about 50 books on spirituality. And so one year, 1991, I was a part of a group that was helping to organize a conference in Florida that was happened every year for ministers right after Christmas. It's kind of a refreshment. They had amazing speakers, Madeleine L'Engle, and as we speak about poets. And so it was, my job was Marty McMain. Does anybody know her? She was the pastor for many years at Boulder. And so we had been colleagues together and friends. And so back in 91, we organized bringing Henry Nouwen to speak to this conference. And he was, at that point, he had just left Harvard, and he had gone up to Canada to the large community. It was called Daybreak, and it was all for care of mentally challenged and physically challenged adults. And he became their chaplain. In the meantime, he was also writing a book about this particular painting. He'd gone and studied it in St. Petersburg. And so we heard his lectures. He brought people from Daybreak and engaged them in the lecture. So we ended up a couple days of his lectures, and we were having dinner together. And I said to him, where can I get a copy of this poster? And he goes, signs it. You can see that on the back, actually. Rolls it up and gives it to me as a gift. That's the kind of person he was. Now, I'm going to tell you the story of the prodigal son as Jesus offered it to us. But I'm going to retell it in my own words in modern terms. So, there was a man. He had 2 sons. And the younger son came to the father and he said, Dad, do you mind if I have all of my inheritance now? I want to go out and explore the world. I want to go out and prove myself. I want to go out and show you what I can do. So he heads out, goes to a foreign land. And while he was there, he spent all of his father's inheritance on wine and on the house of the rising sun. I'm a poor boy that has lost myself. God, I know I'm one. So he's destitute now, penniless. Make things worse, a famine comes over the land. He's so hungry. Nobody will give him anything. One citizen sent him out to feed the hogs out in the field. While he was feeding them, the pods, the corn he was feeding the hogs began to look good to him because he was so hungry. He said to himself, in my father's home, even the servants, the hired hands, have food to eat and leftovers, second helpings. So, and I'm dying of hunger. I'm going to go home. And I'm going to stand before my father or kneel before my father. And I'm going to say, I have sinned against you and I've sinned against heaven. I'm not worthy to be your son. And so he headed home. Now he's off in the distance. Father sees him. He's heart skips a beat. He runs to his son, embraces him, puts his arms on his shoulders. The son says, I'm not worthy to be your son. I've sinned against you. The father embraces him tighter. The tears between them are just saturating them. He says to his hired hands, bring the best robe, put it on his shoulders, put rings on his fingers, and put new sandals on his feet. Kill the fatted calf, and we'll have a great celebration. And so now, the older brother, he's out working in the field, as usual, doing all that his father would have him do. He decides it's quitting time. So he heads in. Here's this noise in the distance. It sounds like a celebration, sounds like a party. I didn't get an invite. Says to a hired hand, what is going on? Your brother has come home and they have this great celebration. Go in and join it. Steam's like coming out of his ears. He's so angry. I'm not going into that party. The father comes out. He begs him to come in. Dad, I have worked all these years. I've done everything you've ever wanted me to do. And yet you've never even killed a goat so that I can have a party with my friends. And now my brother, who has spent all your money on brothels and wine and riotous living, comes home and you celebrate. My son, you've always been with me. Everything that I have is yours as well. But it's right to celebrate. Because your brother, he was dead. And now he's alive again. He was lost. And he's found again. It is right to celebrate. And so ends Jesus' parable. As Henry Nouwen also pointed out, there's love at the end and that beautiful scene of forgiveness and compassion. But there's love at the beginning. Freedom. You have the freedom to go. I love you so much that I give you your own choice of will. This story is about looking through the eyes of God. Looking through the eyes of God brings compassion, brings a sense of home, brings a sense of care and inclusiveness. Isn't that what the world really needs today? Jesus' parable was directed at the Pharisees and the Sadducees who thought they had the answer because they had done everything right. That's who the brother was. But right now, Jesus calls us to be caring and compassionate in a very difficult time for a lot of people. Transgender people who are being so cruelly treated. Migrants who are being deported. Innocent people that are being profiled and deported. Yes, we all know that we can say there are people committing crimes, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a population of people that just want to be safe. Just want to have home. And we're called to bring spiritual home. Women who need to be able to make choices for their own bodies. people who are fighting for democracy. Now, maybe I'm saying too much, or maybe not enough, as REM would say. But I have one more thing to say to this church. Your pastor, Karen, every word that comes from her sermons, every word that comes from her prayers, every single thing she does in this church is thought out to be compassionate, inclusive, and caring. What a blessing to have a pastor like that. In these pews, see, this is why Julie and I come to this church when we're home. Because it's an oasis in the midst of these difficult times. The prayers that you offer, the care that you offer, what we heard in one great hour of sharing, but that's who you are. You so readily become home to everyone who comes here. And we feel it. And we give thanks to you.